Yeah, hi everybody. Good morning. I'm Janelle. I work at CEI, but I am on the prevention team. We mainly work with a grant called Kansas Prevention Collaborative, and the panelists today are all active with that grant as well. The Kansas Prevention Collaborative focuses on substance abuse prevention, suicide prevention, and problem gambling prevention throughout the state. And they have community coalitions throughout the state, similar, I think, to your guys's format as well. But I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we have some questions we're going to go through to talk about engaging youth in your community. We are pretty informal, so like Ty said, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. If we have time, we can definitely, if you have a more in detail question, we might have time to where you can unmute yourself and explain the situation and get some feedback from our panelists. We have Gabrielle Hernandez who is also with CEI, Lydia Fuqua. Did I say it right? Okay, awesome.
Pretty close, yeah.
And then Jordan Roberts. Lydia is with DECA, and then Jordan Roberts is with KDHE. So I'm going to let them tell you a little bit more about their position and then what their role working with youth is to start off.
All right, I can go first. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Gabriela Hernandez. You can also call me Gabby. I am also with the Community Engagement Institute and with the Prevention Initiative. I have been here for a little over a year, and my main role with the prevention team has been with the new youth coalition that's called Kansas Youth Connect, also known as KYC. And so KYC is a youth leadership group focused on connecting youth across Kansas in a collaborative effort to make positive change. So you'll notice that a lot of my answers will be based on my experience with KYC. It's been about that whole year that I've been here with prevention. That's about the whole year that it's taken us to get KYC started. So that's the role I play with youth and here at the Community Engagement Institute.
Lydia, do you want to go next?
You bet. Hi, everybody. It's good to be with you this morning. As Janelle said, my name is Lydia. I'm a prevention specialist at DECA. So I assist with a lot of substance misuse prevention efforts and initiatives across Kansas. I wear a lot of hats in regards to youth engagement. So I'm one of the adult sponsors for the newly formed Douglas County Youth Prevention Board. I'm also one of the adult sponsors for Kansas Youth Connect along with Gabby, so I support her in that effort. I'm one of the adult coordinators for the Kansas Youth Community Change Conference, which I'll refer to a million times today, so I won't spend a lot of time talking about that now. And then I'm also a certified youth mental health first aid and teen mental health first aid instructor, and then a Sources of Strength youth suicide prevention trainer. So lots of hats in the youth arena.
All right, Jordan.
Hello, everybody. Jordan Roberts. I work at KDHE. I've been working there for going on 6 years now. I started this journey as working with the Chronic Disease Risk Reduction Grant, which is funded through KDHE to local county health departments. There's a few of you that I recognize, Daniel, Susan, and Marcia. That are affiliated with CDRR. Things that they work on are tobacco prevention and physical activity and nutrition. And so historically, we didn't really have a whole lot of work going on around youth tobacco prevention in Kansas. And I kind of took on that adventure about 2 years into my role at KDHE. And so revived what is called the RESIST program, which is a statewide youth-led tobacco prevention program. And it had some history. It's changed over the years. It used to be called TASK, Teens Against Smoking in Kansas. And we actually applied to the Kansas Health Foundation to get some funding to revive it. And ended up, I hadn't had any experience working with young people before. So I was just going into this like, all right, I'm young, I'm like 24, I can do it, right? It wasn't that long ago. And quickly learned that it's, uh-oh, did I pause? Can you still hear me though? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll turn off my webcam if I'm lagging. So Revive the Resist program first just by establishing a statewide council, which is what a lot of other state programs had done. So I looked at other state programs like Nebraska, Oklahoma, Iowa, similar to us, they have established programs, and really where their programs begin is a guiding body of young people. So I kind of started recruiting through our chronic disease risk reduction grantees who kind of have those established relationships within the counties to recruit a group of young people. And that was about 4 years ago, 4 or 5. And since then, we've had a new council every year, and we've now have 63 chapters, resist chapters around the state who work on tobacco prevention. So that's kind of the history of resist and kind of our role. And mine is just, kind of firsthand experience through kind of just trucking through this tobacco prevention world. So that's kind of my role. I work really closely with that youth council and making our statewide program run.
Awesome. We have a lot of, these three are the youth experts when it comes to prevention in Kansas. So I'm really excited they were all able to be here with you guys. So next question, what role do the youth take in your guys' programs or with your guys' youth boards? And maybe we can just go in the same order if that works.
Yeah, and thanks, Janelle, for the comment of being youth experts. And so for Kansas Youth Connect, KYC, I think it's very important, and with any other youth organization, that every youth has a role within that coalition, that club or whatever it is. And so in KYC, what we're doing is that we established issue groups, and these were established by the youth in KYC. And so these issue groups consist of an environment group, a behavioral health group, promotion, partnership, substance youth group, and so forth. And it's about, I want to say about 6 issue groups that we have within KYC that focus on a specific prevention area. And so every issue group has a co-chair or co-chair that are the main leads of these groups. But within those, outside of those issue groups also fall members that take an interest in topics that lie within that issue group. And so they all have a role within there to contribute to that issue group and to stay consistent with prevention efforts that are going on in Kansas. And so, they meet outside of the regular Kansas KYC meetings, and they all just contribute to those issue groups and play a role in them. And, that's where they facilitate where their passions are at. And yeah.
On my end, DECA is part of Engage Douglas County, which is our substance misuse prevention coalition here in Douglas County. And it's pretty newly formed. In 2019, we conducted focus groups with middle and high school youth around Douglas County with the goal to identify key issues related to substance use and mental health from their perspective. And we use that data to inform our approaches to substance misuse prevention, including the development of a social media campaign to start to kick things off. And also as a result of those focus groups, we formed the Douglas County Youth Prevention Board. That was one of our strategies to address youth substance misuse prevention. So in addition to sort of planning and executing their own substance misuse and mental health projects here in Douglas County, they also guide strategies for implementation within Engage Douglas County. And then we recently received a drug-free communities grant for Douglas County. And with those funds, one of our goals is to expand DCYPB. That's the shortened version of the Youth Coalition, so that each high school in the county has a DCYPB chapter. So that's sort of the long-term goal, but really they implement their own projects related to topics that they're passionate about. They're also a Resist chapter, like Jordan was speaking about earlier. And then they guide the efforts of the Adult Coalition as well. So that's kind of the DCYPB portion. And then as far as the Kansas Youth Community Change Conference goes, last year was the first year for this conference. It was revamped after a few years of an absence of a sort of youth prevention conference in the state. And COVID hit. And so we threw it together fairly hastily, but I think it was all right. It was virtual. We tried to include as much youth input in the planning process as we could. And we had great participation and great engagement. We covered a variety of topics related to substance misuse prevention, mental health, suicide prevention, relationships, team building, leadership, and it was fairly well received. But this year I'm super excited because we get to see our dream come to fruition in that it's going to be the planning efforts are youth led. So Kansas Youth Connect, which Gabby was just speaking about, they are actually taking the lead on planning and implementing KYC3. So everything that comes to life is for youth, designed by the youth. So I'm really excited to see how it takes shape. And that's going to be June 1st through 15th. So you'll see a lot of adult and youth co-led sessions, a lot of youth-led engagement opportunities outside of the sessions. They are they have a hand in everything from picking the theme all the way to picking out the giveaways and all the prize packs that participants receive. So I'm really excited to see that sort of grow and take shape and let the youth take it on. So those are kind of the two hats I'm going to talk about this morning.
And I would just say Lydia did a phenomenal job on the, dealing with it last year on the KYC3 conference. It was so awesome and exactly what we needed at that time. And I am also on the planning committee for it this year. And these kids are phenomenal. They are awesome. They are leading these meetings. It is genuinely youth-led. And it's going to be a great conference because they're the ones in charge. So yes, I'm excited too. Okay, so for me, what roles have the students played? When doing my research about statewide programs, it's always kind of been the same thing about that this youth council, this youth leadership group that kind of makes these decisions. So that's what we did. We created this youth council, and it's seen as the guiding body of the program. And these kids kind of serve a leadership role, not only in their communities, but also at the state level. And we've even had opportunities for students to get involved at the national level through the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. One of our star kids, Haley Kistner, she was the Kansas representative of this national ambassadors, and she got to go to Washington, D.C. and meet with her lawmakers, and it was a really great experience for her. And she is still involved in the program. She is a junior in college, and she's still involved in this prevention stuff. So that's one thing that you can find are some kids that are just really change your whole perspective on what young people are capable of. So for our council, we meet on a monthly basis. We have 2 in-person meetings, which is really important because all of my council members don't know each other. They're all from throughout the state, different regions of the state. So coordination and getting to one spot is interesting, but it's also a fun part, right? Traveling together, going down there together, becoming this group. So we have those in-person meetings. Those are really important. And they decide our goals for the year. They decide the events and the programs and kind of the different opportunities that we're able to do. So it's really, really seen as a partnership because I have a really big role in this, right? Like I got to make sure they check their emails by texting them, right? And we have to have our group chat going and everyone has to be notified, but they really do come up with the big ideas, and they often ask me to give them more. They're like, you do way too much, like we can do more stuff. So they really are, you know, the big important piece of the puzzle that makes any kind of program work. So we can't make any progress on any of these issues without the young people, the people that we're trying to serve, you know, making the decision. So that's really, they played a really important role in establishing the program and getting it to where it is now.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I want to reiterate something that Lydia said when talking about the planning for the conference this year, that it's for youth, led by youth. And that is such an important aspect of engaging with youth, being youth led. I heard one time that you know that your program is truly youth led when, as the adult sponsor or the adult support, all you're doing is ordering the pizza for the event or paying for the pizza, or, you know, whatever that is. Like, you're doing the work that's just minimal and they're doing all the planning. That's when you know it's truly youth led. So how did these student groups, student coalitions, how did those connections take shape for you guys?
So for KYC, how we started it, we first started as a design team. And so as a design team, it was a committee of some adults and also some youth on that design team. And so the purpose of the design team was to help this youth-led coalition take off. And so we started recruiting youth around Kansas that would like to take part of this youth coalition. And so we were actually meeting in person, and then we faced COVID. So we're like, okay, so how do we keep this momentum going? And what we did is we did a kickoff event to promote what is now KYC. And so in this kickoff event, the youth that were in this design team did facilitate this, and we got to hear from different youth in Kansas of what prevention efforts they're most interested in, and what do they see what they see this new youth coalition take place, and what would their purpose be, what would their mission be. And from there, we opened up the applications to become part of the KYC leadership team. And so we did the application process. And so our main target was to get at least, many youth from different counties in Kansas. And we ended up with about 17 members that did become part of KYC. We had our first couple of meetings, which were virtually. And at first, Lydia and I were taking turns on facilitating the meetings, but then we converted the meetings into being youth-led. And so it was just part of, getting them comfortable within each other, within themselves, and feeling comfortable with facilitating the meetings and what KYC was about. So into the first couple of meetings, now KYC is fully youth-led, and they are taking full, complete control of KYC and how they want it to look and what they want to be a part of. And, like Lydia said, they're now taking a big control over the KYC3 conference, which is amazing. So yeah, that's a little bit how KYC started. And now that it's fully youth-led and everybody has gotten comfortable with each other and have gotten more engagement, so KYC is now definitely taken off from those efforts that we have made.
I will say too, with KYC, Gabby's done a really excellent job of facilitating connection, considering the fact that it has existed almost entirely virtually. To echo what Jordan said about the youth who are kind of leading the KYC3 effort, those youth are also involved in KYC, and it extends to the larger group. They're so they're so with it. They're so put together. I look at them and I think, my goodness, I wish I was like you when I was in high school or college, or we even have a few middle school students involved in KYC. So Gabby's done a really good job of facilitating an environment that allows for good connection, even virtually. So I want to give a shout out to her for that. And then they've just taken the reins and ran with it. With DCYPB, we have a similar sort of background in that we started in January of 2020 and then in March went virtual. So we really only seen each other in person about 3 times, which feels a little weird because we're all in the same county. But I've tried to take some inspiration from Gabby's book and make that virtual environment feel connected, which I think is a huge part of youth engagement right now and probably will be moving forward. I was on a training earlier last week, actually, and the facilitator said, these are unprecedented times, right? We'd rather be in person. That goes without saying. We've heard it a million times, so we have to stop apologizing for being online. We need to come to every meeting expecting connection. And that really resonated with me and really sort of dug at the heart of what I think we're trying to accomplish with youth engagement in this moment is helping facilitate and foster and cultivate an environment for them to continue to connect because this virtual thing isn't going away. So in DCYPB, we've tried a million different things. Some things have worked and some things just totally haven't. Some things that have worked, we play a lot of games, have a lot of fun. There's a lot of virtual adaptations out there for games. We try and kick off an end meeting with games just as a way to sort of cultivate those connections and build those relationships without digging into the business of what we're trying to do. So we've played, categories, and we've done a lot of scavenger hunts, a lot of sour candy, yes or no, those kinds of things. There's a lot of games that you can adapt for a virtual environment. We've tried to use a lot of tools in Zoom, as I'm sure we all have, the whiteboard and polls and small group breakout rooms and those sorts of things to facilitate that authentic connection, even though we can't be in person, which is really the ticket. We've also sent some things, of course, because in person, we'd be having pizza, like Janelle said. That would be my main responsibility is ordering the pizza, but we can't do that when we're virtual. So we've sent them, gift cards to get dinner before we meet, so we can still share a meal together and those types of things. I think the sky is really the limit in terms of how you can help them facilitate that connection. You got to think outside the box to rethink how we do the why. But those are some of the ways in which we've tried to encourage that connection despite being virtual.
Yeah, that's really, really well said, Lydia, about how, it's hard. It's really hard, but we have to realize that the students are also going through this as well. They're having to learn everything online as well. And, we need to stop apologizing for it and get creative and start doing, our job to engage them and keep them going. So I love that. That's great. I love that. So for the Resist group, so how does our student coalitions take shape? So the council, I kind of gave some background about how it was created in the first place. And honestly, every year it changes, depends on the different kids that are on the council. Like the first year we had, a president, a vice president, a secretary, chairs of different, communications program. And then, then 2 years later, that all went down the drain. Let's, everybody's same playing field. So it switches up. It switches up with different kids. But I think that's the important part is you have a different group every year. And it's important to kind of revisit that. What we have found is, leadership roles are important, but also holding everybody accountable is also important as well. So kind of navigating that. But what I always do is I try to kind of give it back to the council. Like what would work for you instead of having me decide it, like so-and-so doesn't show up to meetings, like we're out here doing all this work and this person gets to be on the council, navigating those conversations. That's hard. It's the hard part of youth engagement. There's a lot of hard parts. It's not easy work, but it is, fixing issues are actually pretty easy for you because you can kind of put it back on them and they can make those decisions. They're 100% capable and will probably be happier with the outcome if their input has been heard. So that's kind of my personal experience with leading a coalition myself. But with our local chapters, a lot of times those have the most successful resist chapters that we've had have been established within a school setting, where there's a teacher who is the sponsor, a teacher, a school counselor, somebody who's there every day, but also somebody who's really passionate about this and who really wants to do the work. Those have been the most successful resist chapters, are those who enjoy doing it and enjoy spending time and making relationships and putting in the work to create a resist chapter. So it's not easy. You can't just send out emails and say, hey, you want to join resist? Like that's never going to work. You gotta do the boots on the ground, partnership building kind of outreach. So I think that would be kind of my insight on local coalitions.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. And that leads us into our next question, which is kind of a two-part question. So what strategies are most effective in recruiting youth and young people to do the work? And what do you have to overcome? What are some barriers to the strategies to recruit youth?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with barriers. One of the biggest barriers that we found was going virtually. The youth were going through a big transition with going virtually with school, they were no longer involved in sports and outside activities. So them adding that to their plate, to coming to a different youth group that is also going to be virtually, was difficult, when it came to recruiting. So you really had to think out of the box. It's like, well, outside of all the hours they're already spending on Zoom, what can we do to spend some additional time with us? So with the kickoff event, what we did to recruit you to attend that kickoff event, which was going to lead to recruiting people for KYC, we added incentives, and the incentives included doing a challenge on social media. We hear about all these challenges that youth are super into on social media. And I remember when I was thinking of these incentives, I was like, well, what can catch the eye of these incentives that makes people want to come to this kickoff event? And for me, I was like t-shirts. But then I learned that t-shirts aren't a thing anymore for youth. So we did, like a speaker, a hydro flask. I can't quite remember what else we did. I think it was like a Google Bluetooth thing. And so choosing, incentives that are going to attract youth. And so as well, a big thing is, and I'll emphasize it again, is making it fun, making it engaging. We do a lot of like icebreakers, games, and so forth, and especially using those to get youth to get to know each other. I know that's what we use in KYC, because nobody has met in person, so we're all meeting virtually. So we use those games for them to get more comfortable with each other and get to know each other more. And as well, aside from the fun, also including, questions that, that are gonna create the conversation around what are they passionate about, who do they aspire to be in the future, and so forth. And really listening to their voices and following up those comments that they make, and creating that supportive environment is really important for them to be recruited and to come back and be engaged.
Yeah, Gabby, you hit on something really, really important, I think, when it comes to that incentives piece. I mean, whenever I am working on any sort of youth engagement initiative, I ask myself, what's in it for them? What do they stand to gain? What are they going to get out of this by engaging? And then once I figure that out, I shout it from the rooftops. And that, I mean, that could be anything from naming the skills and the opportunities they're going to receive from participating all the way to the swag they're going to get, like Gabby talked about. In DCYPB, we do a prize drawing for each meeting. So that encourages folks to show up. And then hopefully the content keeps them there. Same thing with KYC3, we had prizes for participation. And so really those items are something that piques their interest, but then you want to develop or empower them to develop the content that makes them stay. I also think too, as a community group or as a coalition, it's really important for us as adults to sit down and ask ourselves what our engagement has looked like and where we want to be with youth engagement. If you have youth involved in any capacity, it's important to have them involved in that conversation. Ask yourself the tough questions like, do we even have youth at the table? And are we calling on them just for speaking events and testimonials without really engaging them in the work or offering them anything in return? Are we involving them, in every step of the process? Or are we just consulting them when we need something from them? Which, is sometimes what happens. And so I think when we take the time as adults to assess where we're at and get real with that and involve youth in that conversation, then that allows us the opportunity to, number one, make youth engagement, authentic youth engagement, a real priority. And then number two, develop a clear purpose in plan for improving those efforts. And the only other thing I would say, if you want to know what works for your community to recruit young people and engage young people and retain them, you got to ask the young people. You have to have them there. They're the experts, and that information is always going to be changing, like Jordan said, depending on the youth that are involved and the youth in the room. So the best way to stay on top of that is to ask the experts and really get them involved from the get-go. And then, of course, I can't reiterate it enough, make it fun. like Ty said in the chat, actually, the sources of strength, suicide prevention philosophy for engaging with youth is 1 part sharing, 1 part planning, and 1 part fun, because that fun is building their capacity as well. So those social gatherings are building those relationships, and those interactive activities are building their confidence and their knowledge in the field that you're wanting them to engage with. And then those interpersonal activities build that trust among the group. So even those fun parts are capacity building. So that's a really important part, I think, of the work. And they're going to tell you what's fun and what sucks. They're really honest about that.
Very, very well said. Very well said. Actually, everything I was going to cover, you covered. So yes, ditto. For sure. Providing something in return for their time. Thinking about, what are they going to get out of this, right? Like I said I was going to do these things for this grant. And I said I was going to work on this, you know what I mean? And I got to engage you. It shouldn't be an afterthought, right? There's been so many times that communities have, chosen a work plan to, what is it? T21, right? To work on Tobacco 21 before it was a thing, but not even asking the students, what they thought about that, or if they think this is something that needs to be done in their community, and so then they find themselves working against things aren't working the way that they should. So it needs to be a thought at the beginning, 100%. And so something that hasn't been touched on quite yet, that's been very, we've had a lot of success with recruiting young people, is that policy experience work. They get those kind of transferable skills, like presenting skills, and then also just figuring out how, that whole legislative thing works, like not only in their community, but at the state level as well. So that's something that, you expose, because there's this group of kids that are like prevention kids, right? Who want to do it for the, right reasons. And they love doing this kind of community coalition type work. But then there are these other kinds of kids who like the specifics about that, like law or something, something a little bit more like civics or something that kind of sparks their interest. So being sure to advertise it in as many different ways as you can, so you can get a diverse group of individuals and provide, just kind of around a whole menu of options and things and reasons to engage and reasons to want to be involved in whatever your program is.
Awesome. Thanks, all. One thing I heard kind of throughout all three of you guys talking was one, that youth culture is constantly changing. I know we're not that far off from being youth ourselves, and it's very different than when we were in high school. And it continuously changes. And then two, part of that is reassessing as an adult where our participation is at, or where youth participation is at. And I'm curious if you three use the ladder participation when you do that. Okay, I'll share, I'll find a link to that and share it in the chat. The ladder participation, it just shows, I think you want to be at the top of the ladder to where it's shared decision-making, youth-led, and it kind of shows different steps to getting there. So I'll share a link and you guys can check that out as well. Next question. So talking about, we talked about strategies for recruiting and engaging youth. What are sustainable ways to keeping them engaged once you get them there?
For me, I think it's, we want this to be 100% youth-led. So it's important that we give them that space where it can be youth-led. And while providing those resources that they may need to be successful, and, bringing that youth-led into the group. So, like, for example, KYC falls under the Kansas Prevention Collaborative. And so the Kansas Prevention Collaborative has, works with many partners and has so many resources. So, one thing I try to do to keep my youth engaged in the community is always provide them with that information from our partners, and like, here's what's new in your community, here's how you can be involved, and so forth. And another way too is, our youth, the youth involved in Kansas KYC has been involved in many meetings. They spoke at many meetings, just because, so many people are interested in what is KYC doing and how can we help them with prevention efforts around Kansas. So, giving them the resources to be successful in facilitating these meetings, and after, the work they did, always giving them that recognition that, hey, you're doing an amazing job, keep up the great work, and how can I support you in future things like this? And there was one meeting where I had two of my KYC kiddos present, and they asked, what can adults do to help to continue the youth efforts in Kansas? And I know Jordan spoke on Haley Keisner, and she's amazing. And she's part of KYC too. And she just said, adults ask for youth engagement. They ask for youth advice. But they also have to be part of that conversation. It's important to learn what to do with what youth are telling us. We need to follow up with what they're saying and not just, keep it in the back of our heads. We want to follow up with them, and we want to continue that engagement. So I think that's very important, is just to give them a space, but also support that space, and provide those resources to them to help them be successful.
Gabby, you took the words right out of my mouth. You're so absolutely right. I think we found the most success when we not only seek their feedback, but we use that feedback to guide efforts that are happening, and to direct the work. So we don't just do nothing with that, because that serves no purpose. So I think that's super, super important too. And you also said something earlier that I think is a really important part of sustainability as well, is that investment that you make in them, creating those healthy bonds and relationships and showing them, that you care, not just about their involvement in whatever initiative you're involving them in, but as people. One of our DCYPB teens said recently that sometimes encouragement is all they need from adults. They want to know that what they're doing is making a difference and that their time is valuable and that their efforts are really appreciated, and that we are just happy that they're there because they are who they are. So I think that investment in them and being clear about that is super important. And I also think that capacity pieces is so important for sustainability. As they grow, provide them those additional opportunities to practice leadership and advocacy, like Jordan talked about. Provide those opportunities for professional development and growth. And as they are able to take on more, give them those challenges, because they are certainly more than capable of rising to the challenge. And sort of the last thing I was thinking about is every event, every presentation, every time the youth are in front of the community, that's an opportunity to connect with more youth and potentially form a partnership there. Recently with DCYPB, we hosted a Help Stop the Spread digital scavenger hunt. So it was a survey monkey for Douglas County youth to participate in, and it helped them learn more about the real facts about COVID-19, where to go to get the real facts, resources in Douglas County. And each youth who participated received a free mask. Well, when we mailed those masks out, we also included a flyer about DCYPB to share with them who's putting this on. And this is an opportunity for you to get involved. If you're interested in the scavenger hunt, maybe you might be interested in DCYPB too. So every public facing thing is a connection, an opportunity to connect with more youth, and for the youth that are involved to make those connections with their peers as well.
Well said, both of you. Something that I kind of, I'm trying to give a personal perspective of like my experience with the youth council, and then also my experience with like the local, which I'm kind of removed from because I'm the state level, but personally, what's been sustainable and getting youth engaged at the state level is just being able to share the space as the role of the expert, right? Like, I'm not the only expert in the room here. You guys are as well. And of course, their confidence grows year after year, that returning, but you have to give them a reason to return. So that kind of leads on to, leading with vulnerability and transparency, being true about who you are and your thoughts, but also, remaining in not that whole, like, I'm the adult in the room, like, you know what I mean? Like, kind of, we're all equals, we're all at the same level. This is a partnership. Lydia mentioned how encouragement is sometimes, all that they need. They just need, kind of an individual to say, your time is valuable and your efforts are appreciated. That is just, I cannot emphasize how important that is, and to be a good listener and to acknowledge and thank everyone for contributing. I mean, that's just coalition leading in general, right? But it's especially important, I found, with young people. So relationships are so key whenever, personally, if you're trying to lead a group of young people. Some local sustainable ways that we've had success in, something that's always really great is that older youth educating younger youth kind of thing. Because eighth graders, a senior, football player comes in and does an education about tobacco prevention and why they choose to be tobacco free, can be so influential to younger kids who look up to them. So that's something that's always been a good way to kind of think of that sustainability thing, because every kid ages out at some point, right? So you got to think how you're going to replace somebody with those who do age out. And so something that could also work is, every senior that leaves, they go and do that presentation to the eighth grade or whatever, and they write a letter to an eighth grader to say, hey, this is why I am, tobacco free, and this is why I served on resist, and I think you would be a great person to take my place when I leave. Something really personal like that is really great. But again, setting an example is really important. And yeah, that older younger dynamic has always been great for sure for us. So.
Well, thank you all. This was really fun. I hope you guys learned some great information.